So here is your first passage. You ready? Take a couple of deep breaths, start focusing. You will have a part of the passage appearing on this slide. I generally try to stick to paragraph by paragraph, as many paragraphs I can fit onto a single slide. So let's see, let's get cracking. Here is the first one on the screen. The moment you're done reading it, let me know so that I can take you over to the next slide. Let's go. So as you can see, the first couple of paragraphs have given you the topic, the retirement decision of Ash Barty, a 25-year-old tennis player from Australia. Ready to move over to the next one? Let's get cracking then. Okay, so here is the next slide. Okay, Zenifa, I am assuming you're talking about the ones that are on the screen right now. Shall I take you to the next one? Waiting for one or two more to tell me that they are done. Okay, here you go. Taking you to the next one. I'm assuming you've read it by now. Although I think Sonali was pacing me so far. But here is the next one. Fantastic, guys. Okay. Yes, Jennifer, 4J, what is that? It is followed by done, so I'm assuming it means done. Okay, so that is it. The passage is over. And now is the time for us to look at the questions. But before we do that, let's quickly revisit this part. What do you want? There are some things that we kind of take for granted, but they can at times be technical. What do we mean by millennials? Or there was this another term here, baby boomer. What are these words? What do you make out of these? So you realize there are a lot of words that we use to describe different generations. Right? So for instance, baby boomer generation. So people who were born after 1946 and to around 1964, that's called the baby boomer generation. Why? The world had gone through a world war, and in general there was recession, there were depression, and therefore in such an environment normally the birth rate drops down. But you know how businesses operate, how schools operate, how colleges operate. They predict how the future is going to be and then they prepare accordingly. So the world prepared for a larger number of people, but in reality a smaller number of people turned in. Right? So they had the best of everything. Imagine a classroom which was built for 35 people had only 30. So those 30 will end up getting extra attention, right? So baby boomers kind of comes from there. Okay. Then after the baby boomers, so baby boomers now, although the term says baby boomer, the baby boomers are nowadays, of course, going to be quite old. After that, we had generation X. So that is the generation which serves as a bridge from the older population to younger population. That's a generation that has seen the pre-internet era and now the post-internet era. So these are people who are today going to be around 44 to 58-year-old. And then thereafter came in millennials, people who are born between 1980 and 1994. Right? And they are also often misunderstood. And you, in all probability, sirs and ma'ams, belong to what we call the generation Z, the letter Z. These are people who are born between 1995 and 2012. So basically anybody who's between 11 and 28, which is where you are going to be probably. And then there are people who are younger still, the latest ones. You are in all probability Gen Z. And then you have this generation coming after you, people born from 2013 and until around 25. What are those guys gonna be called? Or what are they called? Not gonna be called. That's known as the generation Alpha. Makes you feel old that you have another generation coming after you. Now there are some people who can have a generation gap, you see. So let's see. And yes, absolutely, Pratyush, most of this comes from the USA. In fact, The very first such generation from 1901 was called the greatest generation. Then you had the silent generation of the McCarthy era, and then the baby boomers, and then all that. Okay, so all of this, yes. So here is your first question. What's your answer? I need 3 answers before I move on. And Zenifa, we have a Gen Alpha now as well from 2013 onwards. So what's your take on question number 1? And as you can see, it is an assumption-based question. What's your answer? You can always use the seeker on your video to refer to the passage. Answers, guys, answers. Okay, so first up, let me take you back to the right part of the passage. Here it is. So the very first paragraph had surprise decision. One commentator even suggested it was indicative of a different attitude towards the work-life balance among millennials. And the question essentially asks us for the assumption behind it. Now, what is an assumption? An assumption is an unstated premise. An assumption is something that is necessary to arrive at a conclusion. Without that piece of information, the conclusion cannot even be arrived at. And that is why when I normally work on things like assumptions, the key thing that I basically focus on most of the times is the negation strategy. So if I were to use that, look at this line. It has this phrase called work-life balance. It suggests that the millennials think of these two as two separate entities, and then you need to strike a balance between them. Or in other words, they think of their personal and professional lives separate. If they do not keep them separate, the question of work-life balance cannot even arise. So, in order to make this statement, A has to be stated. Try to negate it. Try to negate it. Oh, both, sorry, in option D, my bad, yaar, why would I do that? Hang on, let me just fix it for you. It'll be both B and C. Sorry. That's both B and C. So the moment you negate it, the moment you contradict A, it is impossible for us to make this statement. So A is definitely needed. Older generations had a work-intensive life. We don't know how intensive or non-intensive it was. In fact, I have heard of the Stone Age where people used to work for around only 3 hours a day. So if I use GK, in fact, it is not even going to be true for all the older generations at least. Then see, millennials have found a distinction between personal, professional and personal life. Now look at A versus C. Millennials tend to keep versus millennials have found a distinction. There is of course a distinction between professional and personal life, but do you keep them separate in your life? Do you honor that distinction? Is something that needs to be answered. So therefore C can also be eliminated. They may have found the distinction, but they may not care, right? And thus, even if you negate C, they don't find any distinction, you can perhaps still go ahead and make this statement. And that is why our answer here will be option A. And the moment we ruled out B, obviously D could also be ruled out along with that. And here comes the next question for you on your screen. Which of the following is or are correctly inferred from the given passage? So nowadays we get a lot of reasoning based questions in RC, and I thought that I'll ensure that you get fair amount of practice of those. So what's your take on second? Which one of these can you infer? Interesting. Ready to share your answer? So let's start. Ash Barty quit tennis due to the lack of victories. True or false? True, false, can't say. We'll say it is false. She has won Australian Open 3 times and she also has won Wimbledon title under her belt. So obviously false. So first is ruled out. The first is ruled out. Option A and D are also ruled out, which means that the third has to be true. We don't even need to look at that. So it's only a question of checking second. So Ash Barty had disappointed many people by quitting tennis. Did she disappoint many people? It all boils down to now this. So in the very first paragraph, there was this word called consternation. Right? So it led to her early retirement, led to consternation. Consternation means a feeling of anger or a feeling that you are very deeply annoyed, usually because something bad has happened or something unexpected has happened. So her quitting resulted in consternation. So it basically means that that there were a sizable number of people who were unhappy, who were angry, who were annoyed, and disappointed is in the same ballpark. So this is definitely true. Why would we label it false in this light? Right? Consternation. So because B is true, our answer should be C. C is already true. No one had foreseen Ash Barty's retirement. The very, very first sentence had her surprise retirement. So if others could foresee it, why would we use surprised? Right? So C is our answer, and with that, let us move over to question number 3 on your screen. What does the phrase other mortals as used in paragraph 5 refer to? And in order to make it easy for you to answer this question, let me give you the relevant part. So why don't you read it quickly and then I will take you back to the question. So prior to this, there was a paragraph where the author talked about Djokovic, Federer, Nadal, who are still going strong in their 34, 35 and 40 respectively. And then the paragraph which says what motivates them, what drives them. And then the paragraph says, but it is easy to imagine that for other mortals, whatever. Right? So here is the question once again. Now that we have looked at the relevant part, why don't you go ahead and tell me what you think should be the right answer? Remove both from here. So in this case, if I check, The two paragraphs prior to the fifth one mention the big three plus Serena Williams, along with the fact that they're still playing despite their age. And the implication is that these are guys who are at the top of their career, and even then they're not quitting. So anyone who does not fulfill these criteria can be referred to as the other mortals. So tennis players who have retired early, other mortals. No. Tennis players other than the big three, definitely yes. It's very obvious. So when you say other mortals, you're talking about other than those three which are mentioned in the preceding paragraph. How about third, tennis players other than Serena Williams? Yes, she has also been mentioned in the preceding paragraphs as an example of somebody who achieved yet chose not to quit. And then tennis players who are not at the top of their game. Yes, these were examples of people who were at the top yet did not quit. Right? And therefore, even fourth, but tennis players who've retired early. What was the context? There are people who, so the context was even success can at times lead to your decision to retire. But then there were these four examples. Succeeded, still did not retire. Then what motivates them? Or for other mortals, even success can be a reason enough. So it was not about just retiring early. It was about succeeding and even then not retiring. So for most of us, those who are not successful, not part of the big three, all of those can be used to refer to using this. All of them can be covered under other mortals, and that is why the best answer here should actually be option C. And some of us may have missed out on the reference of Serena Williams and therefore may have had troubles. So more of a fact-based question. Here is the next one. Question number 4 on your screen. What do you think is the answer? A specific detail question. If you can refer to the right part, I think you'll get it right. Okay, so contribute to tennis players continuing to play. Financial security, no. Remember the top four, the big three and Serena Williams that we talked about. Does that contribute to tennis player continuing to play? No, there are a lot of people once they've won a couple of Grand Slams, financial security is guaranteed, they can retire. Ceaseless travel around the globe is a reason given to retire. Growing list of injuries is another reason given to retire. This has been mentioned in the context of Federer, Nadal and Djokovic as a reason why they may continue to play even after achieving things. And that is why the correct answer here should be B. A, C and D are all cited as reasons behind people opting for retirement. Won a couple of Grand Slams. You are financially secure now. You can act as a commentator and all that, remember? So that is by B. And here is the last question based on this passage, and then we'll practice one more. Which of the following statements is or are not true as per the passage? Go ahead and tell me what you think. Okay. Ready? So non-contact sports players have a less chance of getting injured. Hey, this is not true according to the passage, right? They say even the non-contact sports like tennis, there is a probability of people getting injured, right? That's mentioned. Remember the scrambling, stretching and chasing involved in tennis puts a lot of strain on the joints. There is a particular injury named after it, tennis elbow, all of that. So first, which of the following are not true? So first is not true. How about second? Sandy Koufax quit as he had won the Cy Young Award for Best Pitcher. No, he quit because he suffered from arthritis. So second is also not true. Third, the position of a media commentator is a likely opportunity. Third is true. Third is true. It is a likely opportunity available to the retired tennis players. So first and second are not true. And what are we being asked here? What is the question? We are supposed to figure out the ones which are not true. So first is not true. Second is not true. Third is true. And that is why our answer here should be option D, both first and second. And with that, let's get ready for our next passage. And this time around, I'm going to scare you by talking about plastic. So in case you use plastic cups, bottles, which is not BPA free, here is something that you should pay attention to. So once you are, as usual, once you're done reading this, let me know in the comment box and I'll take you over to the next slide. देवल says सर लैग यार भाई अब YouTube में तो यार लैग मेरे एंड पे होना नहीं चाहिए यार 150 Mbps की स्पीड आ रही है मेरे यहाँ पे अपलोड फिलहाल और जनरली ना टीम में से भी कोई ना कोई देखता रहता है लैग आते ही ना अगर ऐसा कुछ भी होता है तो दे इन्फॉर्म मी इमीडिएटली सो आई थिंक शुड बी ए लोकल इशू हाँ Done? Fantastic. Here is the next one. Anji, how about this one? Done? Okay, and here is the last part, a chotu RC passage. The kinds that were used for a couple of years in the cat. Done? Okay, so if you've read it, here is the question for you on your screen. Which of the following is true with reference to the passage? So what's your take? So more or less a fact-based question. Sambuddha and Zenifa have shared their answers. So let's see, BPA can reach the human digestive system only when taken orally. Oh, that is false. The passage categorically tells us that the problem is that BPA can be ingested or absorbed through the skin. So first gone, answer choice B is ruled out. How about second? Yeah, that's true. In the first paragraph, it is stated that BPA has been used commercially since the 1950s and is now one of the most commonly produced chemicals in the world, with some, remember, 3.6 billion tons of it getting produced. So second is true. How about third? The younger an individual is, the higher the levels of BPA is in his or her body. So second paragraph, the consequence being that the younger you are, the higher the levels of BPA in your body is mentioned. So therefore, I think we should have no hesitation in choosing A as our answer. And I think almost everybody has managed to get this absolutely right. Let's head over to our next question. Here it is. Which of the following can be inferred from the given passage? So let's see. Sambuddha. Okay, you were the first one to share the answer. So let's check. Let's check. First, I remember there was this line, the second paragraph that said, there are concerns that the levels of BPA that accumulate in infants can still have adverse developmental consequences. So first can be inferred from that. Okay, how about second? Humans are regularly exposed to BPA through packaged food products. Once again, there's this part in the passage that says BPA is added to plastic to create a special form called polycarbonate plastic used in making food and drink packaging, to DVD cases, medical device. So yes, it is all around us, and therefore we can infer that we are regularly being exposed to it. First and second both can be inferred. How about third? Very high doses of BPA can make various glands in the body dysfunctional. Remember those studies where mice were fed loads of BPA and that caused problems with liver and kidney functions and mammary gland development? So yes, even third can be inferred from there. And that is why our answer here should be option D. All the three are true. All the three can be inferred. Right? So that is why D. And here is the next one. Hang on, just ignore this part. Why is this still there? So this is the question. These are the options. Which of the following words is similar in meaning to mimics as used in the passage? Samudra, you could definitely get this right eventually. So yes, you are absolutely right. The correct option is indeed imitates. The others are not even close to the word mimic. So I think that was an easy vocabulary based question for win, right? So if you think you've enjoyed working on the passages so far, don't forget to hit the like button, and to practice more such passages, more such questions, you know what you need to do? Once you've read this thought, I'll tell you what you can do. You can head over to BYJU'S exam